Right, so as the Ansar Allah Movement in Yemen, more commonly referred to as the Houthis, even more often prefixed by the words Iran-backed, in case you should ever forget that the mainstream media and those pulling their strings want you to boo and hiss at them for that very reason. Well, as they target ever more the US-backed proxy that is Israel, never called that in the mainstream media, of course, in support of the people of Palestine and Gaza, well, the Houthis might well be eyeing up a new target to get the treatment, all in response to one of the most obsequious and lickspittle responses towards Israeli atrocity we might have borne witness to yet. And despite very much still with their eyes on striking at the heart of Israel, a warning shot has gone out to Israel's newest besties, the Al-Qaeda cast-offs and leftovers now running Syria. Because to say this outfit is bending over backwards for Netanyahu at the expense of the Syrian people right now appears to be an understatement. And the Houthis are having none of it. Right, so it's still the main front of Israel's wider war right now. The focus still very much on Yemen and the Ansar Allah movement there, led by Abdul Malik al-Houthi, hence the reason we so often refer to these guys as the Houthis, with the mainstream media padding out their coverage by shoehorning in their allegiances to Iran, of course, because we mustn't ever pass up any opportunity to exercise whose side they are on in the West, can we? We mustn't stop ramming home the fact we want you all to think of these guys as the bad guys. Iran are the villains of the piece. Too much booing and hissing. Quite frankly, I'm surprised BBC News anchors aren't already being ordered to literally do that by their overlords. But there's still time for them to sink even further in the opinions of the UK populace, I dare say, least of all not myself. At any rate, the latest development has been an overnight strike on the Israeli-occupied parts of Jerusalem, as the Houthis have let loose another one of their Palestine II ballistic missiles, set the sirens off in the Jerusalem and Dead Sea areas. The IDF declared it came from Yemen, but that they had successfully shot it down before it reached Israeli airspace. Still, it once again happened in the middle of the night, Israel time. It once again had Israelis getting out of their beds and running for shelters, as the Houthis have successfully now been doing for 10 days straight. So it really doesn't matter that the rockets are being taken out. I'd almost go as far as to say it wouldn't surprise me if that were being deliberately engineered. That the objective that the Houthis always claim to have been achieved is just to cause disruption, sleeplessness, fear, that the ongoing actions of Netanyahu's genocidal hard-right regime is going to see them killed at some point. Worry, stress, illness comes as a result of that. Lack of economic productivity follows, all stem from bad sleep after all. So is this going to be a persistent nightly routine for the Houthis now, to make sure no Israeli has a good night's sleep? I mean, even when Sana'a was being bombed by Israeli allies in the US and the UK, it didn't stop the Houthis launching yet another missile at Israel. Israel's allies can target power stations and docking facilities in Hadida and Capitol buildings in Sana'a, but when the Houthis aren't even there, when these aren't Houthi targets because you don't know where they are from 1 minute to the next, what effect are you actually having? Wasting ordnance only for the retaliation to carry on regardless. But where we're becoming used to this nightly routine of Israel and the Houthis exchanging blows, there's a shift at the same time. Something's changed, or somebody else has actually got under the Houthi skin, so to speak, and therefore might end up becoming an all-new target before much longer. The potential new target is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, the Al-Qaeda and ISIS leftovers in Syria that have taken down the Assad regime with plenty of help from the Israeli, Turkish and Western entities, because now the terrorists of yesterday are our friends for as long as our politicians say so, it seems. It's all right for them to be friends with terrorists, it's just us that get arrested for that claim, so to speak, isn't it? A particular ire to the Houthis, though, has been the fact that HTS have not only allowed Israel to invade and seize Syrian territory, expanding their borders beyond the already illegally occupied Golan Heights, further into Syria, now occupying Mount Hermon, the highest peak in Syria, and also occupying some 95%, it's claimed, of the Al-Qanitra Governorate, and continue to push further southwards into Dara. Israel have bombed the living daylights out of Damascus as well. They've struck weapons storages and silos and air bases and have completely wiped out the Syrian navy, leaving this new Syrian administration with little in the way of militaria to inherit. And still, HTS claim they are allied to Israel, would never attack Israel and want to be their mates. Well, with mates like Israel acting like this, who needs enemies, right? It is not going down well, as you can imagine, locally, as civil war now looks increasingly likely. The Syrian people of all manner of denominations angry at the new administration, not only for targeting them on racial and ethnic grounds in some respects, particularly targeting Christians and Alawites, as described in a video of mine from yesterday. But the fact that they have completely caved to Israel and have only got where they have, taking over from Bashar al-Assad by doing a dirty deal with the genocidal apartheid state to begin with. Well, the Houthis are just as appalled at all of this, it seems. But what has especially given them the hump is the absolute spinelessness and quizzling creeping to Israel that's just recently been expressed by the new governor of Damascus, Maher Marwan. Here's an excerpt from the Cradle explaining this guy Marwan's desperation for close ties with Israel. Sick buckets are advised. The new governor of Syria's capital, Damascus, Maher Marwan, said in an interview released on the 27th of December that the country's new authorities are looking to establish cordial ties with Israel and do not want to threaten its security in any way. Israel may have felt fear, so it advanced a little, bombed a little, etc., Maher told US-based news outlet NPR in an interview, downplaying the massive and unprecedented bombing campaign and army incursion launched by Israel in Syria after the fall of Bashar al-Assad's government. This fear was natural, Marwan added. We have no fear towards Israel, and our problem is not with Israel, he went on to say in a message relayed on behalf of Syria's new government. And we don't want to meddle in anything that will threaten Israel's security or any other country's security. There exist a people who want coexistence. They want peace. They don't want disputes, the governor told NPR. We want peace, and we cannot be an opponent to Israel or an opponent to anyone. Marwan was, it has to be said, speaking directly there, apparently on behalf of his boss, Ahmed al-Sharaf, still better known as al-Jilani, who has himself already extolled his desire for closeness to Netanyahu's barbaric regime. Israel have advanced a little. They bombed a little. That's a lovely way of putting it, isn't it? They've killed people, you Burke. Your people. The people you claim to now want to govern over, to do right by, yet they apparently come secondary to your desire for closeness to Netanyahu's mad regime. No wonder some people are taking up arms against you already, is it? As for advanced a little, Israel now occupies some 500 square kilometres of southern Syria. For the record, the whole of the Gaza Strip is just 350 square kilometres. Your country, that you apparently won't defend against them, won't stand up for your own people against whose lands they're taking. You're going to just let them keep on seizing territory? How much will be enough? How much before you do something? By taking Mount Hermon, for example, Israel now has a vantage point overlooking the whole of Damascus and its western suburbs. They've also already been shooting at Syrian protesters angry at what has transpired since the fall of Assad, where celebration has rapidly turned into anger as the people are probably wondering who is really in charge when the new regime appear to be little more than heavily armed Zionist puppets. It is on this aspect of land grabs that the Houthis have reacted to. The accusation from them is one of accusing Israel of attempting to dominate Syrian resources. Well, that won't be the oil, for one, since the US already occupy all of that, and most of that is in eastern Syria anyway, not in the southwestern corner, which is where Israel's border is with Syria and where they are seizing more and more land. But this Burke Marwan claims it's only natural Israel do this because they're a bit scared of us, all despite HTS, or in their former guise of the Al-Nusra Front, Syrian Al-Qaeda as that was, were very much aided and supported by Israel, so do pull another one, fella. But what Israel have very much seized is the Yarmouk Basin, which is the main water source for the Syrian capital, which, if left in their hands, would mean Israel effectively holding Syria to ransom using water as a weapon. And who would put that past them? They did it in Gaza already, after all, didn't they? Our Zionist Prime Minister in the UK, Keir Starmer, saying they had the right to do that as well. He's never apologised for it either, you know. Denied he ever said it, in fact. Shame it was all caught on camera, therefore, and they. But the problem the Houthis have, though, is that there is little in the way of military targets in Syria for them to target by way of attacking HTS, because Israel has already destroyed military targets so as to deny them to HTS as well, who, despite all of that, still want to be their bestest friends. Sure, the Houthis will keep striking Israel, certainly. Perhaps that should matters continue to escalate in Syria as more ill will towards the new regime becomes apparent, perhaps the Houthis may consider targets there. Though equally, and I suggest more likely, coordinated action with their allies in Iraq, as we've already seen them do, the likes of Islamic Resistance or the Popular Mobilization Units, will dictate the state of play. They who have already gone on record themselves as saying any approach to their borders by HTS will elicit preemptive strikes from them. Do you reckon a conflict between the Houthis and HTS is on the cards, therefore? Do let me know your thoughts in the comments. Meanwhile, of course, the Christmas period has seen escalation on Israel's part against the Houthis, the focus on Yemen coming as other battlefronts have elicited less response. But if they thought escalation could be returned against them, then they were sorely wrong. Netanyahu was warned not to do this by one of his own generals, in fact, but he did it anyway, and he's paying for it. Get all the details of that particular story in this video recommendation here as your suggested next watch. And please do hit like, share and subscribe to the channel if you have not already done so, to make sure you don't miss new daily content and help support the channel, which is always very much appreciated. And I will hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.